I wanted to talk about social media and what role it has played in the last decade when it comes to narcissism. So let's get to it. Now, you can follow me on my Substack. It's myname.substack.com. You may already know that I'm no fan of Reels. If you followed me on Instagram, you'd know that already. I am absolutely not on TikTok. I just I can't stand it. I feel like every time I open TikTok, I even just to browse what's really going on in the platform, I feel like I'm losing my brain cells. I can feel them melting. Anyway, because I work in digital marketing, I end up spending a lot of time on social media platforms, which has led me to these conclusions as I talk about in this video. How does social media nurture narcissism? I don't know if you know, some of you may have probably read the story about Narcissus, who was in Greek mythology. He was the son of the god Cephissus and the nymph Liriope. And I hope I said that correctly. I probably didn't. Anyway, Narcissus was said to have fallen in love with his own reflection. And this is where the term narcissism emerges, which is known essentially as a fixation with oneself. And I feel that this fixation with watching ourselves online has exacerbated the presence of narcissism in our current in our society, and this has been going on for some time. I just don't know if a lot of people have realized how prevalent it is now, and how now the social media culture of narcissism is seeping into our real life, and the boundary between what's acceptable socially and what's acceptable and expected on social media has blurred. Anyway, I take the main characteristics of a narcissistic personality from the book The Wizard of Oz and Other Narcissists. That's really classic text on narcissistic personality disorder. I take some of the main characteristics, not all of them, and I try to tie them into how all of those behaviors are also occurring in the social media space. Let's get to it. Number 1, narcissists have a severely impaired sense of self. And what role does social media play in impairing or corrupting our sense of self? Studies, and I've quoted this in my article, show that our brains are not fully developed until the age of 25. It's one of the reasons why young people are not allowed to drink alcohol until the age of 18 and 21 in many countries, or I think 16 in certain European countries. It's why they can't get a driving license before the ages of 16 and 18, depending on where you live. But these days, children as young as 10 years have cell phones, and I'm sure that there are younger kids who can access the internet without parental or adult supervision. And I'm also sure that it's difficult for a lot of people to supervise their kids 24/7. I get that. I have a goddaughter, but we still should not underestimate the influence social media has on young developing brains. When I was young, we had one family computer that was in the living room. We could only access it during certain times in the evening, and everyone would be sitting around you at home, so you didn't really get that privacy that you have now with your cell phone. And also, anytime my mom felt like she would just disconnect the modem. So so yeah, that's it. That's all the freedom we had with the internet. And I think, to be honest, that was a good thing. Sometimes it's even challenging for me, also considering that I teach meditation and I teach mindfulness. Sometimes it's even difficult for me to stop myself scrolling through all the content on YouTube and Instagram. I can't even imagine how it would be on a platform like TikTok. And these days, when you're on one of these platforms and you scroll through one video, you see video after video, and it's all similar. It's the same thing pops up because of the algorithm. So if you're looking at videos on one topic, you're just going to keep seeing videos related to in one way or the other on the same topic. They're going to keep popping up. It's never ending. And these people then end up repeating the same stuff, and you're listening to it almost 24/7. And inevitable that at the end of one of these scrolling and browsing sessions on any of these platforms that you'd end up internalizing some of the messages that you've heard. And if you're a child and your brain isn't even fully developed, then imagine how that's going to work out. Often this conditioning, it's so subtle that you're not even going to notice that it's happening to you. That's why it's so common that you hear stories of people who are lost down one rabbit hole or the other, and it's increasingly happening among young people. And all of this content is now playing a role in what young people and your children think, and maybe your young siblings, or just maybe you yourself. It's no wonder that we are growing up with an impaired sense of self, especially the young people. Content can and is being used to instill ideas in our minds. It always has. I mean, think about the advertisements from the 80s and the 90s. We knew that this was a psychological condition happening. Why would it be different with social media? It's essentially the same thing, only now it's way more invasive, and there's no opportunity to really supervise this all the time. So, I mean, another thing is that you don't know who is influencing your opinion anymore. When we were younger, we were not allowed to talk to strangers, and there was very little opportunity to do so. But now on the internet, you can talk to anybody, and everybody is a stranger. You can end up talking to anyone. You don't know what their motives are, and they can say whatever they want. Second, narcissists have little or no capacity to self-reflect or acknowledge problems. A healthy self, and this is important, a healthy self is able to self-reflect, acknowledge problems, and take responsibility. And raise your hand if you know more than 5 people in your life who can do all of the above. I'm in my 30s. Sometimes I feel so old. And I know few people only who can take responsibility for their lives. Yeah, I mean, I'm someone who's made a lot of mistakes in my life, especially in my 20s. And hopefully I don't intend to repeat those mistakes now. I'm very conscious about what I'm saying and what I'm doing and what the consequences of that would be on my own behavior and on others. I'm very conscious about that, but I still see it around myself very often. People are making terrible decisions about their lives. A lot of these decisions are spur of the moment kind of decisions. You're excited about something and you make the decision without really thinking of the long-term consequences or even the mid-term consequences. And but this is, anyway, this bad decisions is not necessarily an aspect of narcissism, but what we want to focus on here is little or no capacity to self-reflect or acknowledge problems. Because social media is a space that rewards problematic behavior. It rewards people for bad behavior. You know, some of the videos that end up becoming viral are sometimes some of the silliest videos that you would ever see. Pranks or silly stunts. So stupid stuff is just getting all those likes. And it's the one that's circulating the most. Additionally, I think people are under a lot of pressure to curate a social media perfect life. And this curation obviously means it's very selective what's being put on social media. It's very selective, whether it's good or bad, it's very selective based on the person who is putting this stuff out there. A lot of people are really invested in building this image of themselves online that is cool and glamorous. I personally feel like it's like being in high school, like you want to be the coolest, you've just never graduated, even in your 30s or 40s or whatever age you are. And I feel like because of all this curation, people want more and more opportunities to be doing something cool. I don't know, my hair is really, it keeps irritating me, so I touch my face a lot. I wonder if that's distracting. Anyway, so people want to create the cool image of themselves, curate the cool image of themselves, and this a lot of time means a lot of young people are constantly in the fear of missing out, like in the FOMO mindset, and Because what if you're not there and then something cool happens? You won't be able to share that on social media, and people are first thinking about whatever it is that they're witnessing, whatever it is that they're experiencing. They want the first thought is they want that to be online. And that's interesting because I feel it's taking away from the experience you're having in the moment because you're so focused on getting it online. That's interesting. Why sit and reflect on your behavior and your life and responsibilities when you can just do this cool stuff and get likes and reshares and become viral? What's even the point, right? There's no reward for that on social media. Self-reflective stuff, and trust me, I run a mindfulness and meditation channel. This stuff never goes viral. This stuff does not have the engagement that you would have for viral accounts. All right, number 3, a narcissist has rigid and brittle defenses. And I guess nobody is surprised by this one. We are the generation that's been labeled snowflakes. And I unlike other people, I find this really funny because I have had my share of sensitive moments in the past. And I think it's much worse than it was just even a few years ago. I mean, every time I log onto one of my social accounts, I'll see someone being canceled, someone high profile who's canceled, suspended, thrown off Twitter, banned, permanently banned. I'm seeing it all the time. And I think social media has created this rigid and brittle environment, especially for ideas and opinions to nurture. So it's not really nurturing ideas. It's only nurturing what's popular, and people can manipulate that really, really easily, or the algorithm, right? Social media, by reacting to people who are hurt or offended or outraged by certain content, it's open for discussion whether a lot of times if that is necessary, but I think a lot of times it's not necessary. It's still happening, and social media caves to these reports, to these people, and ends up, deleting entire profiles off of these platforms. And for a lot of people, then social media is like, oh, okay, then this is real life for people. And in reality, it's not. There's so few opinions that become popular and mainstream on, like so few. And I'm saying that as someone who grew up in Pakistan, and I'm living in Europe for 10 years. I've met people from all over the world. I've lived in a lot of different places. I've traveled a lot, and I've actually lived in different countries. So people have all types of ideas and opinions. People are extremely diverse, and what we see online is nothing compared to the diversity that actually exists in the world, the diversity of opinion. And none of that is reflected on these online platforms. Online platforms are definitely not diverse. Only the loudest people get heard, the loudest opinions or views or ideologies get heard there. And I'm sure that when young people who really think Twitter or social media platforms are the world eventually end up going out in the world, they're going to face a lot of opposition to the ideas that they're just hearing. And what's interesting is that does tend to happen. And then the self-image of people who've grown up in this narcissistic container, it shatters. That's why it's so brittle, right? It breaks because then there are so many people who are looking at the world differently, and this is reflective of a narcissistic person who does not want to hear a disagreement on his worldview. On social media, you can report people for doing this, but in real life, you can hardly go into it. You can't go to a city of like 13 million people and shout and say this person said something I don't agree with. Yeah, nothing's gonna happen. So this is really crazy, but this is the type of climate that social media has created, and it's nurtured these people who are now completely incapable of hearing alternate opinions. That's why they go after accounts that are not agreeing to what they believe. It's interesting. Then a narcissistic person lacks empathy. He is unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings or needs of others. The higher consciousness is nothing but empathic and compassionate. But compassion and empathy are two of the most overused and hijacked words on social media. They have been grossly misused and abused to justify unjustifiable and damaging behaviors. I had to read that one out because I'm in the mindfulness and spirituality community. I even see this happening in these communities, and that's really sad. I mean, look at empathy. I have something here from Daniel Goleman. He's the author of Emotional Intelligence and some other really cool books. He writes this about empathy. Empathy builds on self-awareness. The more open we are to our own emotions, the more skilled we will be in reading feelings. Cognitive empathy means being able to read feelings, which means you have to start off with an incredible level of self-awareness in the first place. It's more than just a hashtag on Instagram. It means being able to show compassion for all sides, not only the one that is agreeing with you. Yeah, of course, and online cancellation mobs seem to forget about this one. When people attack others on social media, no matter what side of the debate you're on, that is no longer empathic. And it doesn't matter what cause people are standing for. If people say, I'm doing this for just cause, if you're hurting people, if you're hurting them financially by trying to get them canceled for a just cause, it's not just anymore. It's just not just anymore. A narcissistic person has a sense of entitlement. He has unreasonable expectations of especially favorable treatment or automatic compliance with his or her expectations. Sometimes see this often in social media, automatic compliance. It's a feature. I think now it's safe to say that automatic compliance is a feature of social media. I mean, it's the entire purpose of certain or these online cancellation mobs. They threaten, they abuse, and sometimes it's so extreme. So I don't know if you know about doxing. People release private information about social media users. I feel like this is an example of narcissistic rage, to go to that extreme where what you do is not proportional to what the original offense was. This is highly disproportional. You want someone to lose their job, you want someone to lose their livelihood, you really want to send, people after somebody. You may end up endangering them and their family physically. This is disproportional to whatever they have said online. Is incredibly disproportional, and I think a lot of times it's happening because people feel enraged when their opinions are not validated, and this is really like an example of narcissistic rage. It's a typical example because you're so angry and your entire sense of self and your worldview just shatters because of even the idea of opposition. So you send your flying monkeys, which are now sometimes millions of Twitter followers or Instagram followers, after somebody trying to destroy their life. This is it's incredible how this is happening. But if we want to live in a healthy world, if we want to be healthy, if we want to heal ourselves, we must learn to encounter and deal with opposition in rational and reasonable ways. We must allow the space for opposition to happen. Otherwise, we cannot prosper. We cannot innovate. All of the progress rests on the basis of rational and reasonable discussions. And what is a discussion if it does not contain an alternative? It is not a discussion anymore. So if we want to be healthy individuals, we have to develop the skills to listen to others, even if what they're saying goes against our worldview or our values. It applies to both or any side of any argument. We have to be able to build the compassion to hear and listen to another person's opinion on something. And I've seen a lot of times people saying they delete comments of people who disagree with them on social media, and that's also interesting. I mean, it's one thing to delete comments of abuse and threatening and so on, but if someone is just politely disagreeing with you, just to delete that comment is already an interesting look. into people's mindsets now. Some people say do it for self-care, and it's not really self-care to try and silence all opposition to your ideas and beliefs. Then we tend to forget that people are seldom who they appear to be online. And the entire social media culture is essentially a curation. What you see of me and these online videos or on my channel is only a very tiny bit of who I am. You cannot make assumptions about me as a person just by looking at some of the content I make. Of course, in some cases, you can place people in certain personality types, or some people openly talk about their beliefs and so on. Of course, that's all different, but it's still a curation. People are still people behind whatever they're doing online. And this awareness seems to have dwindled, a bit. Who you are online is who you are as a person. If you've said something wrong online, then you are a bad person. This has been blurred. This boundary. And to be honest, as a mindfulness teacher, most people already feel judged in their lives. And now all aspects of our lives are pretty much online for others to judge. I can't imagine the type of havoc this must be, playing on people's minds, especially young people, that they have to live like this, to have their entire lives on social media being watched by millions of people all over the world. It's got to be having an effect, really. It's not possible that it isn't. And it's interesting because I feel social media has become a container in which these behaviors, all of the ones that I've discussed so far, are being nurtured by algorithms, by features of social media, the like and love buttons, the virality of content. All of this is rewarded also by money, monetization, and fame for some people is also important. I'm not sure what's going to be the future of this, what this current generation who simply grew up around phones is going to be like in the next 10 to 20 years. I think we can see certain representations in real life already where people are so divided into, like, mostly politically divided into such extremes, and we see this happening in almost every country now. I think it's something that started from the US and now it's sort of leaked to all over the world as two opposing sides. And you can't simply walk the line in the middle. You either choose one eventually, or you're driven into one eventually, or the other, or you're forced into one. And well, let's see what happens. At one point, I don't know what's going to happen and who's going to come out and take responsibility for this. This is simply something to think about, and perhaps a good reason to limit our use of social media. And that's all for today's video. If you like what you watch, please subscribe to my channel, or check out some of my other channels on Substack or Instagram, or link in any other platforms that I should be on. I'm very selective about what platforms to be on, where really to put the effort. But I love interacting with you. I love getting comments and discussions about these topics. So reach out if possible, and see you next time. Bye-bye.